Hey everybody, Steve here, the retired hobby tech guy. Let's go ahead and turn some of this music down here. Welcome back to the channel. I am Steve, the retired hobby tech guy on the Varied Life channel. You can check me out. Please like and subscribe. Please, that would appease the YouTube gods, which would help in some way, shape, or form, I think. With that being said, today's video is about the Ultimate Laser Engraver Showdown. Yes, find the perfect balance of price, features, and quality when it comes to laser engraving. And so we're going to take a look at that. This video is coming out because I'm looking for a new laser engraver. Now, the current engraver I have is a little $200 5-watt laser system, and I've done a bunch of work. I've engraved a ton of coasters. Matter of fact, I just finished up work for a client, did my first sale, so that was kind of cool. Even with the little 5-watt laser, hey, I'm already making money. With that, I do see the need to get a bigger laser system. More bells and whistles, because I don't want to fall into the trap of getting an entry-level laser system and then saying, okay, well, I want to get the next higher up, and then the next higher up, and the next higher up. And so if I added up all the lasers that I would buy until I got a really, really nice one, I would be spending more money than if I just buy once and cry once. And that's what we're going to take a look at. So with that being said, we're going to take a look at some laser systems, kind of a desktop review to kind of narrow down some of the companies that I'm looking at in regards to lasers, and some possible options, and look at things like price, look at customer service, looking at engraving speed, service life of the tubes that are available for CO2 or the RF metal tube lasers, and some other things that might come into play depending on your situation. So my situation is going to be geared towards me, and so obviously we're going to be using those. So let's go ahead and get started, and we'll take a look here. Here we have our Excel spreadsheet, which I made up, talking about the laser engraving machines. And we're going to take a look at a number of lasers. The one laser XRF, which we have there, the Thunderbolt 350, which is a 55-watt laser. And well, that's a 30-watt RF, which is comparable to a 60-watt laser. The infamous X-Tool P2, or the P2S, which is there. The Monoport Onyx 55-watt in the OhmTech Polar, and we're going to take a look at another one as well. So basically what we're going to end up doing is we're going to look at price, the laser power, so that's kind of important, customer service. We'll look at the warranty, the work area, engraving speed, precision, service life, cameras, autofocus, safety features, and some other things. So we'll start off with the one laser, XRF, which is a metal tube laser, and it is a 30-watt laser system that we see here, which after doing some research, I can find it kind of ranges anywhere from 60, 65 to 70 watts of a glass tube laser. So that's kind of interesting. This is a new company, and they use some tried and true shipping and companies from China that I think it comes up with LaserBolt. LaserBolt and them use a lot of the same resources, so you'll get the same build quality. And what we end up seeing is that one laser adds in some bells and whistles, to which make or break the YouTuber considers the one laser a mini pro, because it has a lot of pro features that are found on more expensive industrial machines at a pretty reasonable price. And since we're talking about price, we're talking about $39.95, which is basically $4,000. That's the current price right now. And if you go to their website, you'll find that it's $1,000 off. So normally it would be $4,999, and I think until February, if you lock down a price or whatever, you can lock down this price and you can save yourself $1,000. And so then that you could buy other stuff, material, the boost base or whatever. They're looking, again, they're based in California, as far as I can tell, which is kind of nice. And they're going to have US-based customer service, which is really nice, which most of the other ones do as well. their warranty that comes into the warranty. The big thing about warranty is that you can go to places like what is that cheap tool store that Harbor Freight. You can go to Harbor Freight and you can get like a 30, 60 day, 90 day, 1 year warranty. It's amazing. I know this guy that I worked with when I was rehabbing houses, that he had Harbor Freight tools and they would break constantly. But he had the warranty, so he would just go in, get a new one as a replacement, and he never ran out of tools. But when we're talking about laser engraving, we want something that has a little bit more quality, is going to last a lot longer. And that's definitely what I think we're seeing with this one laser. Their warranty is a 3-year on the machine, 2-year on the electronics, and 1 year on the laser, which is pretty good. Seems real inclusive as far as the entirety of the machine, so that's pretty nice. And me and my background, I was an electronics technician in an industrial environment. Worked for the state of Colorado, and I worked with a lot of electronics, circuit boards, routers, security cameras, DVR systems with redundant backups, and so on and so forth. Fiber optics, cameras, PTZs, alarm systems, control panels. I did a lot of stuff, a lot of maintenance, a lot of install. It was, so I kind of know what I'm talking about in that regard. Probably more than the average person. So yeah, there's that. But that warranty is pretty good. And usually what we end up seeing is that if you have warranties that have shorter periods, that means that there's a possibility that there's going to be some problems with that piece of equipment or machine that you have to take into account, some possible downtime. So with somebody who wants to get into a side gig of doing lasers, you want to have the best warranty possible, and you don't want the one with the shortest warranty, or like the one I got, which is 30, 60 days or whatever. I've had it like just over 2 months, and the power is already subsiding. So yeah, I'm really looking forward to getting a better machine. We can see the work area is 25.59 by 13.78, and the engraving speed, which is huge, 1200 millimeters per second. Now this is kind of like advertising the top speed of a car. Will you actually go that top speed of the car? No, you're going to be limited by the speed limit so that you can get from point A to point B safely without any degradation of quality in the items that you print, engrave, or cut. So with that, I do understand that, probably not going to be engraving at 1200 millimeters per second, but compared to some of the other machines that we end up seeing, like, we have the Thunderbolt, and it has an engraving speed of 1000 millimeters per second. The P2 and P2S is 600 millimeters per second. The Monoport Onyx is 500 millimeters per second, and the OhmTech Polar is 500 millimeters per second. So while we do see a difference in price in some of these, and so, for example, let's take a look at the one lasers, basically $4,000. Thunderbolt is about 4,500. X Tool P2 or P2S is 3,700 to 4,200. Then, basically 2,100, and then $2,000 for the OhmTech. But when we look at the speeds down here, we can see 1,200, 1,000, 600, 500, and 500. So if you're doing this as a side gig, this is another consideration that you need to look at and keep in mind, because if you're doing a big batch, let's say you have a grid and you have a jig and you're doing keychains and ID cards and dog tags and whatever, coasters, whatever it is, you're going to be limited. There's going to be a limit on how much you can engrave within a certain amount of time based on that speed. So, for example, I just finished up my very first job where I did 80 slate coasters. And so each coaster on my little 5-watt machine back there ended up being 21 minutes and some change. Multiply that by 80, and it was like 26 hours, something like that. Let me see. Let's just say it was 21 minutes times 80 and that came out to that, and divide that by 60. So we ended up with 28 hours of engraving time. And that was just the engraving time. That's not talking about prepping the coasters with prepping them with lacquer, wiping down the coasters, switching them out, putting in the next one in, aligning it to make sure that everything's square. Now we're looking at getting more time. And so when you have that slower engraving time, that's going to have an effect on the amount of product that you can produce. So when we're looking at things, for a hobbyist, it doesn't really matter, because if it's just a hobby for what you're doing and gifts for friends and family, and you're not trying to do a side gig, it doesn't really matter how fast it goes. 500 millimeters a second, sure, no problem. Even slower is mine, and it's like, yeah, it's totally fine. I have no problem with that. But when we're talking about doing a side gig and possibly selling items, now we need to bring this into consideration. So yeah, definitely that's one of the recommendations, and one of the things that I want to address is how fast is this going to engrave. So with these that engrave at 500, 600, you're not going to be going that top speed. So probably, I'm guessing, about 400, 350 to 400, maybe 450 is where you're going to go, depending on what you're engraving and so on and so forth. You could dial it in, but that's probably the speed that you're going to be going. When we get to the Thunderbolt and you're looking at 1,000 millimeters a second, or the one laser, the XRF with the metal tube laser, you're looking at 1,000 and 1,200 millimeters per second, respectively. Are we going to be going that hard and that fast? No. So you back that off of a couple hundred. So with the Thunderbolt, you would be doing, let's say, 800 millimeters per second. And with the one laser, you could be doing 1,000 millimeters per second. Then the next thing that comes into play is the work area. So you can go fast, but if you have a small work area and you can't get a lot of product onto that engraving area, it doesn't matter how fast you are. If you can only do one, like on my laser, I could only do one coaster at a time, that could cause some problems. So we can save some time by having a bigger work area. You could put more product on, and once it's set up, you press go, and then you're done. So that saves me the time of, like, for example, the one that I had, where I do one slate coaster, then I have to go in, wipe it off, put the other one in, do the framing and check it and move it and make sure that it's all square, close the lid, go ahead and press go 20 minutes later, and then I have to do that again. Versus having a machine with a larger build area where I could have like 5 or 6 or 8 coasters at a time. They're all lined up in a jig. Boom, hit go, and I'm off to the races, and I don't have to babysit or actually do anything for those coasters or the products that are being printed out, because I have a larger build area. So that's something to keep in mind. So with the build area, let's look at the OhmTech here. What we end up with is a 20-inch by 11 when we go to the monoport, which is kind of strange, because on the monoport, it said that it's 19 inches by 11.5, but then in other places it said it's 18.1 by 11.4. So even within the description of the monoport, we had two conflicting things there. And so I'm not really sure, so I just put both of them up there. Then we end up coming to the X tool, the P2 and the P2S, which I thought the P2S would have a larger build area, but surprise, it's 23.6 by 12, both of those. And then when we get up to the Thunderbolt, we're looking at 20 by 12, which is kind of more that's kind of way down. That's kind of in this area here. So I was really surprised that the Thunderbolt didn't have a larger build area. Still very respectable though. But when we get up to the one laser, we end up with a 25.59 times 13.78, which is, that's pretty good. Compared to all of these, we do have a larger price tag for the one laser versus the P tool and the monoport and the OhmTech, but the build area that you get is definitely a lot bigger, so you could do more products. Again, that's less time that you have to do in regards to changing out, putting products in, and so on and so forth. So yeah, I'm really excited about this work area because if you're doing a side gig, that's going to come into play with how much product you can produce, which means how much profit you can make, and then the manual labor that you actually have to do. If you have to do more physical work, you got to get paid for that, or you should. But who wants to do more work when you can have a machine where I can put 10 coasters in there or whatever it is, however many items I have, and press go, and then I can go do something else. Go take a nap and then wake up and come back and boom, it's done. Instead of having the smaller work area. And combine that with the engraving speed, those two things are going to be pretty important in regards to getting your products out so that you can do more product. Again, I wish I had the one laser or, the P2S or any of these instead of the little 5-watt rinky-dink system that I have, which the engraving area is 3.14 inches by 3.14 inches. It is tiny. It's a $200 cheapo laser engraver, probably meant for middle schools or whatever, but I was able to make it work. But yeah, it would be awesome to be able to, I'd really be interested to see what the engraving times, and I might pull up Lightburn. That's something I might do in another video to see if I can put in the information for some of these laser engravers into Lightburn to get me some estimates. So that way I could say, well, if I'm going to do a coaster with this design with the one laser, it would take this much time. Thunderbolt take this much time. X-Tool, P2S, it would take this much time, and do a comparison that way. I think that would be really neat. That's some good information, especially if you're getting into a side gig. When we talk about precision, most of them are 0.001 millimeters, which is pretty much across the board. I'm not sure about the Thunderbolt because I couldn't find it anywhere, but pretty much the X-Tool and the Monport, kind of the same thing. So precision is pretty good. The one thing about the RF, the one laser XRF, is that is a metal tube laser system, which is maintenance free, and we'll get into that. Air cooled, so we don't have to worry about chillers or stuff hanging off of your machine to keep your laser in optimal running form. Is that the RF laser generally has a smaller laser dot than a glass tube. So with that, you can get more detail in your engravings, and if that's something that you're looking for in a laser engraver, that's something to consider with a metal tube laser. So talking about that, the service life. So with a metal tube laser, it's a self-contained system, and you can find some videos on the one laser about it. There are some other systems that have it as well. But looking about the service life, I found that it's between 20 to 50,000 hours. And with the one laser saying that it'll last up to 38,800 and something hours. So if we pull up Mr. Calculator here, let's go ahead and we'll kind of bring this out here. If we have 38,000 hours, and how many hours in a day? There's 24 hours in a day. Oh, we don't even want to do that. Let's just divide that by 8. Let's say you're doing a business and you're working 8 hours a day. You're running your laser 8 hours a day, which is not what would happen. You end up with that, 8 hours a day, so that'd be the number of days. So you divide that by 365, and you end up with like 13 years or something. It's some crazy amount of time, whereas compared to glass tubes, you're looking over here like 1,000 to 3,000 hours. This one over here, the Home Tech says it was 11,000 hours. I don't know about that because generally what I've seen is information stating that a glass tube will run 1,000 to 3,000 hours, maybe a little bit more than that. And then the quality of the power that comes out of the laser starts to degrade. And so you might have to do a replacement. The thing is with a RF metal tube laser, which is what we have here, and I think also on the Thunderbolt, yeah, they have the RF laser, is that you're looking at 20 to 50,000 hours of service life. So basically, you're looking at 10, 15 years, and you're not going to be engraving 8 hours a day constantly. So, it's not going to be 13 years. It's probably, 20 years, something like that. So you're definitely going to get the bang for the buck. And of course, there's going to be some degradation as things get used over time, but not so much as with the metal laser compared to the CO2. At least that's what I'm reading. Now, if I'm wrong, please put that in the comment section down below, because I want to make sure that I know what I'm talking about when I purchase a laser system, whether it's glass tube or a metal tube laser. So anyway, it ends up, the X tool, it says that it runs for 38,000. I don't think that was it. 38,000. I think that one was this one here. So yeah. And then the Thunderbolt, I couldn't find the service life on their laser system, but I'm assuming from other non-Thunderbolt, non-One Laser, non-X Tool resources and things that I searched online that said that glass tubes last anywhere from 1,000 to 3,000 hours, and the metal RF tubes last 20 to 50,000 hours. So yeah, put it somewhere in the middle, and that's probably what you're going to get, depending on the maintenance that you do. The interesting thing is, I haven't seen a lot of videos on maintenance, but if you're doing maintenance on a laser, and even on my rinky-dink 5-watt laser system back there, you need to do maintenance. And so every few days, what I'll end up doing is cleaning the lens on the laser and blowing all the dust out and the debris and the burnt stuff that I've engraved, to try to keep that thing working as long as possible until I get my better laser. This came from my experience with working with servers, with working with computers, routers, fiber optic equipment, DVR systems, cameras, working with high-end PTZ cameras in an industrial setting, and lots of them. You need to do some type of maintenance, whether it's daily, weekly, quarterly, yearly, whatever it is. You need to come up with a plan to do that. And cleaning the lens is definitely important. We'll talk about that. That has to be a non-abrasive type of cleaner, which is the best. So no alcohol, no abrasives. But that also includes the electronic components that are within the laser system itself. And that brings up the question of, where are the electronic components located in your laser system? So, can the dust and debris of the things that you're engraving get onto the electronics? If it does, that means you're going to have to service that more often than not. And to service that, what I'm talking about is getting either a vacuum or a blower, compressed air, to blow all that stuff out, so that you don't get dirt and debris into the contacts, which could cause problems, cause things to overheat on your system, as with any electronics components or device. We've all seen the pictures of the computers where you open up the case and the guy hasn't cleaned it in forever, and it's just caked with dust and dirt, and he can't figure out why it's running hot and it's about to blow up. Yeah, you need to do that maintenance. So the other thing to look for when you're looking for that ultimate laser engraver that you want to get, how often are you going to run it, and how protected are the electronic components within that laser system, which will dictate how often you need to clean it. So yeah, that comes into play. Some of the other things, we have the camera. So on the One Laser, the XRF, it has a 5 megapixel camera. I don't think there's a camera on the Thunderbolt. Maybe there is, but I'm not sure. I couldn't find anything. But the X-Tool P2S has two 16 megapixel cameras, which is pretty nice. That gives you, of course, they do a lot of neat stuff with their camera system and their proprietary software, so that you can, orientate your print onto the item by using the cameras. There's two of those, but everyone pretty much has a 5 megapixel camera. I'm just kind of wondering on systems like the One Laser, if you'd be able to upgrade that, or if there's even a need to do that. 5 megapixel camera, for the price, I would think you would put a little bit better camera in there, but in all honesty, I'm not sure. I just know that 5 megapixel is definitely it's industry standard. It's a standard camera, I guess. But in working with Bosch camera systems and PTZs and all that, resolution is king. And so a 5 megapixel camera way back in the day, yeah, those were kind of expensive. But now you've got little kids' toys that have 5 megapixel cameras. I think they would up that. And I'm wondering if you could upgrade that. And again, the final question is, am I going to be using that camera and totally reliant on that? I don't know. If you're using Lightburn and if you're doing a side gig, then what ends up happening is that you're talking about, definitely with a side gig, you're probably going to have a jig where you put in, let's say you're doing keychains, and you're going to have a jig set up with cutouts of where you put all these keychain blanks in there, and it's all squared and everything, and you have the template in Lightburn, the software that you use, and you put the graphics on there and you hit go and you're good. And then once those are done, you remove those keychains or whatever it is, you put blanks in there, hit go again, and you just keep going, you're running, you're good to go. Whereas with let's go back to the page here when we were talking about the cameras, but with the 2 megapixel cameras and the X tool, like the P2 or the P2S or their F1 Ultra series, cameras are a big thing. And so the cameras, you can actually put the blanks of, say, the keychains. They don't have to be set in a certain position because their software will pick up the shape and it will automatically put that graphic onto that item and engrave it. So you don't need to have a jig. It's not required for that, which is pretty good. But it's not 100% guaranteed in regards to accuracy. And there's also some people that ended up saying and stating that even with that, they've had problems with certain items because of the shininess. Like, say, they're doing stuff like dog tags. We've got like this dog tag here that I ended up doing that with certain reflective surfaces, it would skip some of the items, and which isn't really a big deal because you just pull it out and put it back in, and usually it engraves. More often than not, you're going to get those things engraved. But if you're doing a side gig, just do a jig. And then you don't have to worry about the camera system. You don't have to worry because everything is already set. So again, the camera is kind of a thing where it's like, I like the idea of a camera. I haven't used a camera with a laser engraver, but we'll see what happens. And whatever system I end up getting, it'll be interesting to see that. Autofocus is really important because way back in the day, with different laser systems and pretty much all of these, except for the last one, the Omtech Polar, and even the Thunderbolt, I think it has an autofocus. I'm not sure. We'll just leave a question mark. So if you know if it does, but generally that seems to be the way of the world now. So autofocus is definitely a thing. And if you don't have autofocus, usually what they'll end up doing is they'll have a little piece of plastic or metal that as the laser head comes down, you just, on top of your material, you put that spacer in there that gives you your focus for that laser on top of that material, and you set your head and boom, you pull the spacer out and you're good to go to get the optimal laser focus. Other systems do it automatically, whether it's by touch or using LiDAR or some other similar system to get the optimal focal point for that laser and do your engraving on whatever material it is. So that seems to be the industry standard. The other thing is that you've noticed with all of these they all have enclosures. And to be honest with you, there are systems out there that don't have enclosures that are a lot cheaper. But really, with the amount of VOCs that engraving puts out into the air, and especially in my situation, being in an apartment, condo type of place, or inside a house, you probably want to have an enclosure for a couple of reasons. One of those reasons would be for venting out the VOCs and through either venting them outside or into a air capture device that cleans the air and rids you of all those horrible smells and stuff. The other thing is that with an enclosure, it protects your eyes from that laser that is being emitted. And that's a huge thing. When you have an open style gantry with no enclosure, you have to be wearing some goggles on there. And they have to be the correct goggles for the wavelength of that laser. And usually what you'll end up seeing is the goggles that you'll get will actually have printed on them what that is. So in my little laser system that I got, which gave me pause, is they sent these safety goggles. Now, safety goggles are looking pretty cool. They fit over my glasses. Definitely look cool. But the problem is with these, there is no indication on the wavelength on what this actually filters out. So I don't even know, because there's absolutely nothing written on these as far as what is the wavelength. So I don't even know if these are really, really safety goggles for the laser system that I have. And yeah, you got to be careful. You only got one set of eyes, so take that into consideration. So yeah, the whole idea of having an enclosed laser system is the way to go. Now, way back in the day when lasers first came out with like the X tool and their open gantry system, I think the one came out in red color and whatever, and you've seen them. Just sitting on the table with the gantry, and it does the laser thing. You wear the goggles and you're good to go. But we've come to a time where that is not an industry standard anymore. So the question is, can you go and get one of those and pay less money? Yeah, you can. But yeah, it's just not, why do you want to be breathing in that stuff? Why do you want to possibly let your eyes be harmed by a laser? And if you have kids or dogs, animals, whatever, you probably want to have a closed system with an enclosure, emergency stop switch, with the key, a removable key, so that nobody can turn the laser on if you're not there. Again, a lot of safety features come into play here. So with that, talking about safety features, most of them have open door or an emergency stop, have both of those. And that's what we end up seeing, so that even on my little 200 watt laser system, if you open up the cover, the laser stops. And that's kind of good because you don't want to see the laser, because that can damage your retina and you can go blind. And yeah, that's not fun either. They also have the emergency stop switch. Mine doesn't have an emergency stop. You just have to pull the cord out of the back. But all of these systems have a cover which has either a limit switch or a magnetic switch where you lift the lid and the laser will stop operating until you put the lid back down. I know the one laser system has a set. It has a pair of two magnetic switches, so you kind of have some redundancy there. Thunderbolt, I think it just has one. P2 and P2S just has one, and I think the same thing with all of these. They just have one limit switch type of deal, or magnetic switch. But I do know that the one laser has two magnetic switches on there on that top right-hand corner there. So yeah, that's kind of an important thing. In dealing with electronic stuff in an industrial setting, I've worked with limit switches for doors and panels and so on and so forth. And it's good to have some redundancy. So that is really, really important, because things go wrong when you least expect it. And it's nice to have some redundancy. So when I saw that, I was like, hey, the guys at One Laser know what they're talking about. So that just kind of gave me a warm fuzzy. Maybe it doesn't for you, but yeah. Now we're going to talk about some other things here for all of these, and probably what I'll end up doing. Oh, I don't want to do that. Let's just copy all this stuff here, and we'll bring this down here, and we'll paste it. So that way you can see what we're talking about. So in these different systems here, what we're talking about. Let's just go ahead and we'll just do that. They have some other things that come into play. Like with this system here, the one polar, I think that's a CO2 laser. I'm not sure if it has a built-in water chiller, but I do know that the Monport has a built-in water chiller. In other words, you have to fill that up with some type of water, either RV, RV fluid, antifreeze type stuff, or distilled water to chill the CO2 glass laser to keep it in the optimal, because if it gets too hot, it degrades faster and it can eventually break. So that's kind of a problem with CO2 lasers. Some of them have built-in water chillers, which is really good. And I think the Thunderbolt has a built-in chiller. I don't know if I saw that or not. If it doesn't, usually larger systems will have a connection to where you could hook up an external chiller or a water reservoir to keep your CO2 laser. But no, this one doesn't. The Thunderbolt doesn't, because it's an RF tube as well. So it just has the control panel and what we end up seeing there, emergency spot. The control panel looks really nice. Probably the best out of all of these. This just has some indicators on it. Same thing there. You just got a button on that one. You got a small control panel on here. But I would say the Thunderbolt probably has the better looking and better functioning panel than the one laser. But the control panel is good because with that, you can actually load up your projects into the laser without being reliant on the internet or being wired in or things like that. You could put stuff on a USB, boom, load it in there. And with the onboard memory, you could pull up files so that you could do, let's say you just do the same jobs all the time for your side gig. It has enough storage space where you could store the majority of those files that you run again and again and again, and you could just do it straight from the machine. There's no reason to actually go onto the computer and connect up. But the control panel is pretty important because you need to be able to, excuse me. But a control panel is important, I think, in my opinion, and I've run into this in the industrial setting when I did electronics, is that if you're dependent upon a software and you don't have a redundant backup system to do things, you will eventually run into a time of where you will need to do it and you won't be able to connect up, and then you're dead in the water. So having that plan B, or the ability to get work done without being hooked up to the internet or being cloud-based or things like that, that should be a consideration if you're looking at doing a side gig with laser engraving. There are some systems that, watching a ton of YouTube videos and so on and so forth, some people are saying, well, with certain systems and engravers, it's got to go to the cloud, and if you're not hooked up to the cloud, you're just dead in the water. So yeah, that's not the type of thing that I want. I want some redundancy. I want to be able to operate independent of the cloud. If there is an opportunity to use the cloud, that's a great, it's another feature, but I want to be able to do my prints and engravings and cuttings all locally if I absolutely have to. So I think that's very important. When you don't have that, that's where you run into trouble. And that even happened in the industrial setting where I worked, where there was old systems that we had that it was purely software based, but then if something happened to the software, is locked out or virus or whatever it is, there was no way to get and do what we needed to do. And that caused some serious problems in some projects that we did. We actually ended up redoing entire systems, video camera systems and DVR systems, because of those problems that we didn't have the redundancy. So with that experience, that's just another thing that I look for personally. So yeah. And what happens? What happens if the internet goes down? I still want to be able to do my side gig, okay, during the apocalypse. So, I like that redundancy. The other thing we end up having, the X tool, or not the X tool, but the one laser has a control panel as well. It has red dot positioning, which is really, really nice because wherever that red dot is, that's where your laser is going to be, which is ingenious. Because if you're using absolute coordinates, and let's say you're doing an item and you square up your square coaster or whatever it is onto your build area, and it's like, okay, we know that my thing is square, and I put my laser dot on the top left hand corner, and that's where the starting point is. All I have to do is set my material there, boom, good to go. And it's so easy to square up your items that you're going to cut or engrave. So that red dot positioning is incredible. It has fume guard. Fume guard is seems like a fancy word for just a thing that measures the VOCs that are in the air. A lot of these systems, like Thunderbolt, the P2, P2S, and some of these, and others, many others, don't have fume guard, or they won't tell you about the VOCs. It's kind of a nice thing. It's definitely a nice thing, but if you have the proper ventilation system for your laser engraver, that's not going to be much of a problem. But I do like the redundancy that if you do have fume guard or something that tells you the air quality and it goes above a certain level, then you know, hey, wait a second, maybe there's something blocking my ventilation system. Maybe I need to do some periodic maintenance on that. Or something is, a tube or whatever it is, a vent hose is kinked and there's problems, or a bird built its nest, and, so that's kind of a good thing to have when you think about it. Maintenance free. When we talk about maintenance free, this one, and I would say this also pertains to the Thunderbolt as well. Come on, copy, paste, there we go. And when we talk about that maintenance free, we're talking about that RF metal tube, which has that service life of 20,000 to 50,000 hours, which is really nice because it's air cooled, as composed to a CO2 system that requires that water, a chiller, depending on the environment that you're in and where your laser is at. That stuff needs to be maintained. And recently I just saw a video where a guy was getting some degradation in a CO2 laser, and he had to go through and flush it and clean it, and he lost a few days of production time because he had to flush everything out. Now the good news is that there's a maintenance. He was able to do that maintenance and get that power back, but again, that's another system that you need to maintain for your laser system. And is that something that you want? For me personally, I don't necessarily want a CO2 laser, because unless it had like a built-in water chiller, but still you have to talk about, that's another thing you need to maintain. And so with an RF metal tube, you don't have to worry as much because it is an air-cooled system. Now with that, it doesn't mean it's totally maintenance-free. That's kind of clickbait. But when we're talking about, the maintenance on a metal tube, you can see some pictures of metal tube laser engravers, the RF engravers, and it's an aluminum housing. It has fins and all this stuff, which requires air cooling. And so you still need to do some maintenance in clearing out and making sure that those fins are clean, that there's no dust and debris, because the buildup of dust and debris can overheat a system. I've seen it with computer and electronic devices and so on and so forth in industry. And so while it might run for 50,000 hours, you still need to do some type of periodic maintenance. But it won't be the same amount of maintenance that you would have to run as you do with a water-cooled CO2 system. So when I say maintenance-free, you're still going to blow out. Check the fins and everything. And again, going back to the question of where does all the electronics reside within your laser engraver? If there is no separation between your electronics and your laser engraver, and where all of those VOCs and the burnt this and that your laser is doing when engraving and cutting, that can increase your maintenance And if you don't do that, that can possibly degrade the life of your laser system. So again, it'd be interesting to see what the maintenance is for all of these. And I really tried to find information on that on all of these systems, but I didn't really find anything. Now, with that said, I haven't checked into the manuals to find out. That will be the next step as I continue to do my due diligence before I pick the laser system that I want. You have 128 meg storage on the one laser, which is really nice. So again, if you're doing batch or you're doing a side gig and you have, oh, I always do these coasters, I always do these cutting boards and this and that, you could load those products into your laser and run it from the laser machine. And I think you can do that with the Thunderbolt as well, but I couldn't find exactly how much the storage was. I think with the Thunderbolt Plus, it was some huge amount, but definitely that's just another thing that I would like to have in regards to if I was doing a side gig. So if I do some side gig work and I know I'm going to do these items many times over, I don't even have to be hooked up to my computer to run those things from my machine. And again, we're kind of looking at this from a side gig point of view. Talk about a magnetic lens. This is really interesting because you have that either a CO2 laser or an RF metal tube laser, whatever that thing is that produces that laser beam. It'll go through a series of mirrors and it'll eventually pass through a lens, a specially coated lens. Then it'll go on to your material and engrave on whatever it is you're engraving or cutting. Those need to be cleaned periodically, and depending on how much work you do. With that said, in the experience that I have in the military and as in electronics, do not use any abrasive cleaners on laser equipment because that will degrade the lens, which will degrade the quality of the laser. That could affect the quality of the products that you're putting out. And knowing that from the military and some stuff that I worked on, the maintenance was, hey, don't use any abrasives on this. And yeah, of course, people would always screw it up. The other thing I like on this, on especially the one laser, it has an additional air assist system on there. So with that, it has its own air assist that is included in the machine, which is good, but it has an additional port or connector for an external air assist or air pump, and maybe one that has a tank so that you can get more air pressure so that you can clean up your prints and your cuts and you won't get that funky residue when you cut stuff out. So if you're kind of wondering what that looks like, is kind of like this here. So you can see all those burnt areas on there, that discoloration, if it'll over focus. Yeah, there we go. So that kind of brown discoloration, that happens because I don't have a couple of things. One, I don't have air assist. Two, I don't have like a grid honeycomb system to set my material on, so I'll get some smoke coming up through the cuts. But yeah, the additional air assist is a very, very good thing to have, especially if you're doing a side gig and you want to upgrade and you're really doing a lot of putting a lot of products out. That additional air assist port will be something that, yeah, I'm going to get a big air compressor with a tank so that I can run this thing so I can get better quality products. Yeah, for the hobbyist and maybe the part-time gig guys and gals, the onboard air assist that's included with the one laser is good to go. But it has that additional port, which I think is an awesome idea, because now you're covering a demographic of not only hobbyists, part-time laserists, or part-time gig people to full-time gig people. You're kind of encompassing all of those with this system. The Thunderbolt, I don't know. I think it had an additional port. I'm not sure. The X-Tool has its own little air assist that it has. And as far as the monoport, I didn't honestly check those because some of these other stats on here just didn't give me a warm fuzzy. So, you know, with the 500 engraving speed, even the 600 engrave speed, it's like, I don't really care. because I want something to go a little bit faster, harder, deeper, all the fun stuff. Some of the other interesting things, like the magnetic lens for the one laser, is that it just pulls out and it goes right back in there with a little magnetic tab. So it is really easy to clean that magnetic lens. That's the thing I forgot to tell you. Some other systems have that as well, which is a really great idea, because again, when you're talking about preventive maintenance or ongoing weekly, quarterly maintenance, monthly maintenance, whatever it is, do you want to spend 20, 30 minutes, 45 minutes tearing down your laser head and cleaning and then putting it all back together? Or do you want something where you just pull the cover off, pull out the lens, clean it, pop it back in there, replace the cover that is magnetized, and boom, you're good to go? We're talking about minutes, maybe a minute or two compared to 10, 20 minutes or something like that. And again, if time is money, yeah, that's probably important. Or if you just don't like taking crap apart to maintain it, even if you're just a hobbyist, that gets old and boring. It gets frustrating, and it's like, yeah. So, and I've talked to a lot of people on a lot of different hobbies and things like that, and I've been involved in different hobbies where it's like you go cheap, and then as you go cheap, then you start experience these things where it's like, man, it would be nice if this had this, or if I had bought this next level system, which had all these nice bells and whistles. And then eventually what people do is they upgrade, and then they upgrade, and they upgrade. So my whole idea, excuse me, is I know what I want to do as far as a hobbyist. I know what I want to do in regards to maybe a part-time gig thing every once in a while. And so I want to be able to do all those things. I want to minimize the maintenance. I want to have a large build area. I want to be able to engrave faster to get more products out if need be. And just to have all those things, the red dot positioning, onboard storage, the control panel, like on some of these systems have, the P2S, some people say, well, it's got a control, and it's not really a control panel. It's kind of a mini control panel. It's not as inclusive as, the Thunderbolt or the One Laser or things like that. There you just got a button. So maybe a button there too. So yeah, there's a lot of different things. When we get into the X tool, the P2 and the P2S, the interesting thing with that is the P2S has a stronger fan, which I spelled strong wrong. Stronger fan. Has curved surface engraving. You do batch processing based off of, you don't have to do jigs if you don't want to. So that's kind of an interesting thing, but that's because of their proprietary software. Pretty much with all of these others, you're going to be using Lightburn or some other, I guess there's some free software out there, but you get what you pay for. I definitely like Lightburn, and I love it. Gives you a lot of flexibility in the things that you can do. Let's get back to the thing that I'm looking at so that you can look at it. So yeah, with the X tool, you have a stronger fan, you have the curved surfaced engraving, which is kind of important. And with that, so let's say if you have a guitar, and you have a guitar, it has that kind of that shape. Well, they have their program and the algorithm to do a mesh to map that curvature. And so the laser can go, and as it engraves, and it'll kind of run that elevation or the mesh of that item. That's kind of cool. But in all honesty, and the things that I'm going to be engraving are probably not going to have that. So while that is really cool, and you see the videos, yeah, that would be neat, but how often are you going to be engraving things like that? That seems like a one-off thing. And as opposed to looking at it from a part-time gig or even a full-time gig thing, unless you've really gone into a niche of saying, hey, I'm going to engrave the curvature parts of guitars or bowls or, something like that, any other laser engraver is pretty much going to be able to do what you want in regards to, coasters. You'll have to get an additional rotary system if you're doing like cups and mugs and glasses and things like that. But I'm hoping that one of these days, Lightburn will be working on curved surface engraving and actually have a module that will come out so that you can do the same thing. And I think if they do, of course, they'll charge some more money for it. But for those niche people providing those niche products, yeah. But I just don't see that curved surfacing thing being a real big moneymaker. So, but it is nice. I think that's one of the things about Xtool that is nice is that it removes the learning curve from doing Lightburn versus, hey, I want to do this, put this picture on this dog tag or whatever it is blank, and you just throw it on the board there and it prints them and engraves them. That's great. But there's also some things where it's not quite 100% accurate or precise in regards to wear. So you might have a little bit of, drifting of, hey, this is a little bit tiny crooked. And again, that's where the jigs come into play. And if it's a whole different thing of doing part-time work versus full-time work, if you're going to do full-time work, you're going to be using a jig. That's just the way I see it. So yeah, just some interesting things to take a look at when we're looking at these different systems. Thunderbolt was interesting, kind of going through, a 30-watt RF metal tube. On their website, it equates to a 60-watt glass tube, which the one laser is a 38-watt RF metal glass tube or metal tube. And so somewhere it's between 65 and 70 watts, somewhere around there. The rest of these are pretty much 55 and 50 watts. But there are some other things that we're going to take a look at. And somebody recommended, well, you need to go get Aeon. Look at Aeon and see what they have. Well, this is their Mira S red line. And when I saw the price, that's basically $7,000, which is like $3,000 more than what I want to pay. But when you look at some of the things that is included in this is built-in water chiller, cooling system, exhaust fan, air assist pump, max speed, 1,200 millimeters per second. Where have we seen that before? Yeah, we kind of saw that before on the on this one here. The engraving speed for the one laser is 1,200 millimeters per second top speed, where you're looking at $4,000 now versus $7,000 here. So you're looking at $3,000 more dollars. Is that really going to be worth going for something this high end? Now, Aeon has some great laser systems. I've been doing a lot of looking at their machines and watching a bunch of videos and checking out the websites. Again, that starts at $69.95. But when we were looking at the working area, it's 11 3/4 by 19 3/4. But it's $3,000 more. It also weighs 220 pounds. 45-watt premium CO2 glass tube, RF metal tube, offers in 30 and 60 watt. They don't have RF ceramic tube. The glass cooling method is water. RF is air cooled, kind of like the one laser. And you just run through some of these things and it's like, okay, red dot positioning. Yeah, we got that. Has autofocus, which is similar to the one laser. Bullseye leveling gauge. You just put a level on top of your machine. Dimmable overhead lighting. I don't really care about that. Smart air solenoid valve. Modular laser tube docking. Whatever. Blade table, honeycomb table, blah, blah, blah. 1 gig of memory capacity. That's not bad. 1 gig is good. And some of these different things. But when you start looking at these higher end machines, you'll see that with the one laser, that it includes a lot of things that these higher end industrial machines include. So that, just by looking at the specs themselves, that kind of tells me that the one laser is kind of focused on using some of these industrial bells and whistles and bringing them into the hobbyist and side gig laser people and bringing this to the table and at a price that is reasonable. So yeah, the one laser is looking really good. So yeah, but this is the cheapest Aeon laser system, and again, that's $7 grand. And this doesn't include, it's got a pass through. It's got a pass through, a little tiny pass through. With the one laser, it's got a better pass through. So again, it depends on what you're doing. Uh, but with that, there's another system that I'm looking at, and that one is the Raleigh Automation, which is the Lasermatic. And I didn't upgrade my or update my Excel file with this because I've been going over it, and it's like, well, I don't know if I want it. I do want it. It's got some good specs, but it's a diode laser system. But the work area is 24 by 15, which is nice. Compared to, what is it, 24 by 15.3, and this one is 25 by 13. So yeah, just a little bit bigger on the one laser. But when we're looking at the Lasermatic, you're looking at $1,300. So, but again, it's a diode laser system. You can get it with a chuck. Output power, you have 10, 20, and 30 watt with or without rotary. And an air assist system that comes in, which is pretty nice. So if we did a 30 watt, and that would come out to, without the rotary, $1,600, $1,850 with the rotary chuck. So that's another one that I'm looking at, and that's kind of going to be, this is going to be my fallback one. It also has a camera system, and then they also came out, has a camera, large work area, blah, blah, blah. Best of both worlds, can do all that stuff. So the Raleigh looks pretty good, and it has, of course, the cutting speed, which is 800 for basswood. It's kind of like, well, how fast does it go? I know it depends on the material, but for cutting speed. But as far as engraving speed, what would that be? Interesting. Maximum scanning speed is 30,000 millimeters a minute. Is that the speed? I'm not sure. But it's Windows and Mac compatible and so on and so forth. So, and the other thing I just came out with is an IR module that's a 2 watt, so that you can throw that in there and you could start doing some different, covers the module, current blue diode, shortcomings, engraved metals, aluminum, bare, anodized or painted, brass, silver, gold, gold not tested, and stainless steel. Good at engraving plastics, ABS, polycarbonate of all colors, clear PC, as well as PE, HDPE with darker colors. Not good at engraving at white or HDPE. Most acrylics, has no effect on glass. Not good for producing colors on stainless. So, there's some good things that this does, and then, but that's another $400. So yeah, so right now when we take a look at the different systems that I'm looking at, that's going to go away. We're not going to do the Monport. We're not going to do the OhmTech. X-Tool, I don't think we're going to do that. So we'll get rid of that. Thunderbolt, maybe, but the warranty comes out. You've got a bigger build area. You're looking 25.6 by 13 basically 8 by 20 by 12 versus. So yeah, Thunderbolt doesn't look like that'll be second place. So between one laser and Thunderbolts, but yeah, for some reason I can't get those. I might do the Raleigh thing, but I would be disappointed. So with that being said, I'm checking and with one laser to find out about shipping options because I am retired here in Korea. Let's go ahead and minimize some of this a little bit and kind of go over this. So we're looking at 39, basically $4 grand right there with a entry price. You're going to save $1,000. Early bird price, $100 touchdown deposit, which will keep that early bird price in play. And I already have light burn, so I wouldn't want that. I'd want the base booster, which is, ooh, it's only $2.99, so it went down. Nice, 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 nice. Even light burn went down for the pro version. We don't need the chiller, maybe the pie burn. Even those went down in price. But I would definitely get the one laser XRF with the booster riser base. And you can see some of the things here on that. Let's see if we can make this a little bit bigger. So yeah, it has autofocus, 5 megapixel camera, the base boost, fume guard, all of that stuff. They're eventually going to come out with a conveyor feeder system. So if you have longer items, you will be able to engrave, kind of like what X-Tool has on some of their items. Big build area, which is good. 3-year warranty. Actually, it's a 3-2-1 warranty. Sealed, safety. Again, the RF tube, which is the one that I want to be getting, up to 2,000 dots per inch, which is huge. Long-lasting 30,000 hour RF metal tube. 30,000 hours. 30,000 hours. Good Lord, that'll last as long as I engrave. Fume guard, which lets you know. Acceleration, print speed for the XT, which is the glass tube, and then 1200 for the metal tube, which is what I want. They don't have the conveyor system belt or the conveyor system out yet, but if you have a longer item and you want to do multiple engravings, you could do this right here. So yeah, they're a new company and they're growing, but yeah, that's good to know. Honestly, I don't think I'd be using a conveyor system for what I see myself doing, and I don't think a lot of people would be doing that either. That's kind of like a one-off niche type of thing. Now, if they do the conveyor system, check this. If they do the conveyor system to where you could put multiple items on there and then the conveyor runs, and let's say I got 50 coasters that I need to engrave, and they have a conveyor system where I could put my coasters on there, just run it all at once, boom, that would be awesome. Let's see, what else do we got on here? Make myself a little bit smaller. Camera, precision, finest carvings, intricate detail of 1000 dpi, 1000 dots per inch, each cut a masterpiece of delicate craftsmanship. The base boost, which is a perfect add-on for 40-ounce tumblers or larger products, which is an extra. It's only $2.99. It used to be $500 or $4.99. So yeah, that's a good-looking system there. I like that. It also has a fan in the back for vacating or venting out those VOCs and the smell outside, or to a clean air system. Autofocus, conveyor feeder, they're working on that. That's that extra base system, which is really nice because that opens up and you can lower the tray, which is great. 65 dB, which is industry first intelligent noise reduction energy saving device for silence lower than 65 decibels without compromised performance. 65 decibels. Let's see. I've got a little decibel meter here. So we'll take a look at that. I don't want to read it right now, but if we're taking a look at this and we're talking at just a normal volume of what I'm doing right now, you see that we're hitting the 60s and the 70s. So if this is true, then operating at a point where it's going to operate at 65 decibels, that is great, especially for somebody like me who's in an apartment or let's say a condo or a duplex or fourplex or whatever, you have neighbors. That noise reduction is very important. Some systems are definitely louder than others. So let's see what else we got. Compatible with Lightburn, RD Works compatible, all of those different file formulas, formats. Wi-Fi. Our system instantly alerts when temperatures rise, ensuring safety, stopping the laser firing before any damage is done. Oh, okay, so that's cool. Sealed for safety, streamlined body, blah, blah, blah. And it goes through and it has all of the cool things that it's got over there. As far as max acceleration, we're talking 3G, which is basically 30,000 millimeters per second squared, which is huge. When you start getting into acceleration, and again, that's the max acceleration. And the only times that I have seen higher max acceleration is with industrial size systems, which have industrial size prices. So this is kind of a big thing. And again, you're looking at 800 to 1200 millimeters per second engraving, magnetic switches, RF continuity, Wi-Fi, red dot, camera, open door protection, air assist intake, material tray, honeycomb table is included, which is awesome. Hassle-free alignment, one-touch control, pass-through, auto conveyor feeder, they're working on that. So yeah, that's right now, the one laser is the system that for the XRF, for the metal tube, is the one that I'm looking at. So yeah, that's what we got going on. So I decided to make a video and kind of go over some of the thought processes and share, because some people were asking me, what are you looking for in a laser? What type of systems are you looking at? Because other people have gotten involved and want to do laser engraving, because I did. And they see the fun that I'm having, the stuff that I'm doing is kind of cool, and make a little money on the side. And so with that, what laser systems am I looking at? What are some of the considerations that I'm keeping in mind? What am I looking for in regards to quality, build area, production, you know, all of those things that we just talked about. So yeah, it's going to be really interesting. I did contact them to find out on if they can ship to Korea, so they're working on that. So let's keep the fingers crossed on that. They also had a, if you go to One Laser on the Facebook thing, and I think their webpage as well, maybe not the webpage, but their Facebook, is they have a contest where you can sign up and they're going to be giving away 1 or 2 laser systems. So, you know, you got to do whatever their thing says, and you get a number of entries and so on and so forth. So, yeah, check that out as well. But there's 16 days, 11 hours, 40 minutes, and so many seconds. And you can lock in the pre-order price by doing this 100% or $100 touchdown deposit, which is non-refundable. Okay, let's be upfront and clear. But that's the early bird price. So you're going to be saving $1,000. Normally $5,000. Now it's going to be $4,000. And you could go between the glass tube, which is a respectable $3,000 basically. So you're still going to save $1,000. So yeah, it looks like it's a really, really interesting system. It's meeting all the standards that I want in regards to a laser engraving system. Still open to other opportunities, but yeah, that's what we got going on. So anyway, if you know some other systems or laser engraving companies that are kind of within this price range, $3,000, $4,000, maybe $4,500, within that range, and the things that I'm looking for, all the bells and whistles, put it in the comments section down below, or you can send me an email. You can do that as well, or send me a PM on Facebook if you're watching this on Facebook. If you're watching this on YouTube, like, subscribe, please. I would appreciate that. And if you want to, you can buy me a coffee, kind of like what these people did here. They've bought me coffee, and the link is in the description box. So they're awesome. I have much respect for them, and you could be one of those people as well. So click the link and get on it. Anyway, that's going to be it. So that's kind of my thoughts and what I'm looking at in regards to lasers and the systems that I'm looking at. Still open to more information or new information or information that I missed. Feel free to correct me in those things or let me know. And with that, we will see you on the next video. Okay? Peace. Good stuff.